To mulch or not to mulch? That is the question. Hey fellow garden gnomes, this is Brittany. Welcome back to my channel. I'm sitting on the edge of my garden and you can see that behind me I do have some straw, but those are pathways. So before I laid out my garden, I laid out pathways and then I laid out my plants so that I would have a set area to walk and know that I'm not potentially trampling some little seedlings. But if you watch my garden updates from last year, you know that last year I did completely mulch my garden with straw. My last video was the improvements that I would be doing for this year. And one of the things I have started thinking about is, do I want to mulch again? There are definitely both pros and cons to mulching. Some are a little more pro or a little more con depending on what kind of garden you have, where it's located. But I'll go through kind of the main ones. So pro number one is that it keeps weeds down, which if you are kind of a lazy gardener like I am, that'll be really nice for you. Now how well that mulch prevents weeds really comes down to what type of mulch it is, where you've sourced that mulch, how thickly you've put it down on your garden. Because if you get straw like me and you just kind of get it from, a local farmer, then it may have weed seeds in it. So you may put down the straw thinking, oh great, I don't have to come back and weed. And then you come back and you find all these sort of little bits of grass popped up. Personally, I don't find them to be too big an issue because they're usually rooted in the straw, which makes it really easy to pull them up. But I mean, if your intention was to never have to weed, then that's something to consider. And you might be more interested in going with wood chips, which I can't personally talk about wood chips because I haven't done it myself. But from what I've seen from other people and from what I understand, I don't think you'd have the problem that you have with straw of weeds popping up. If there's any of you who can disagree with that, please mention it in the comments. Of course, the reason mulch keeps weeds down is because it keeps the sun from reaching the surface of the soil, and thus weeds, even if they germinate, they don't have anything to photosynthesize with. And so similarly, in the second pro, the benefit comes largely from the fact that the soil is not being hit by the sun directly, and that pro is water retention. Because the sun is not directly hitting the soil surface, you don't have the same level of evaporation that's happening, which means that if you water your garden or there's a rain, it'll get through the mulch, it'll dribble through the mulch into the soil, but when the sun hits that mulch, the majority of the water has already gone down in the soil, it can't really be evaporated, and you end up with a garden that's able to hold on to moisture much longer than if there wasn't mulch on top of it. Now to get to the cons. One con is that if you put the mulch on too early, or say you've left it from one season to the next, then it keeps your soil cooler longer, because for the same reason that the water isn't being lost from the soil, because the mulch is keeping the sun from hitting the soil surface, that also means that the sun can't heat the soil up as quickly in the spring, and so that can be an issue for your heat-loving plants like tomato, zucchini, okra, sweet potato, those crops. So if you are very careful about the timing of which you put your mulch on your garden, then maybe you can circumvent that, but that is something to consider. The next con really depends on where you are, and that is the fact that mulch attracts slugs. If your location already doesn't have a ton of slugs, then it's probably not as much of an issue. But if you already have a slug problem in your garden, then mulch is going to make it worse. And so that's really something that you need to consider before you decide to put mulch on your garden. Now, a couple types of mulch. We have straw, like I use, which I find not too hard to get a hold of. I'm in a rural area, of course, but So there's a couple farms that will put up ads on like local classified sites selling bales of hay and or bales of straw, sorry. A bale really covers a lot. I only need maybe 1.5 to cover this garden. And then of course the next one is wood chips, which I cannot personally talk about because I don't have wood. I haven't ever used wood chips, but I have heard of many people who do, and there are many YouTubers who have used wood chips, and they have had really good luck with it. If you're specifically looking for information on that, a great way to find it would be to look up the Back to Eden garden method. That method largely uses wood chips. And then finally, I would say that probably a third option for mulch would be dead leaves. So if you have, say, a huge pile from the fall, like maybe you have an acre property like I do, and you have a lot of trees, and so you do a lot of raking. Maybe you have a big pile of leaves that have dried out. Just spread that on top of your garden. Whereas straw and wood chips definitely wouldn't decompose, and you would probably end up removing most of it from your garden in the fall. With leaves, actually, leaves can really decompose much more quickly than straw or wood chips would. By the end of the garden season, you're much more likely to have kind of more organic matter in your garden. So back to the question of, should I mulch? I have to think about that a bit more, namely because I do have a large garden. The effort of putting the mulch out and then the effort of collecting it back up in the fall, I have to ask myself, okay, based on my experience last year, was that effort worth, whatever benefit that I got? And I'm not sure how much of a benefit I did get. But what I would definitely say is that even if I do put mulch in, I'm probably going to wait until most of my plants are a good distance above the ground, because then it's a lot easier for me to get the mulch around the base of the plant versus trying to work with like tiny little seedlings and trying not to cover them up and everything. That can be kind of a pain in the butt. So I probably still have a couple weeks to decide whether mulch is for me. But meanwhile, I hope that I've maybe helped answer the question of whether mulch is for you. So if you like that video, please hit the thumbs up. If you want to see more, please hit that subscribe button. And until the next video, stay wildly green.